As we grow older, one of the most surprising things isn't how much we forget, but how much we suddenly remember. The decisions we made in silence, the desires we buried under shame, and the words we never spoke, they all seem to echo louder with time. For many seniors, the deepest regrets aren't about careers left behind or money not earned, but about the emotional distances never crossed and the sexuality that was never allowed to breathe. In younger years, so many people learned to survive by suppressing what they really felt, sexually, emotionally, romantically. They followed rules, played roles, and kept up appearances, thinking that was the cost of being accepted or respected. But now, sitting in the quiet of older age, many realize that the cost wasn't worth it. The real loss wasn't in what others thought of them. It was in what they denied themselves. The nature of sexual repression is complex and often misunderstood. It's not just about what is visible on the surface. It's about the hidden layers that shape our lives and choices. Sexual repression doesn't always look dramatic. It doesn't always come with tears or trauma. Sometimes it looks like politeness. Sometimes it sounds like I'm just not that kind of person. It's the slow, lifelong suffocation of instinct, curiosity, and craving, hidden beneath moral obligation, religious guilt, or fear of judgment. Many seniors today were raised in times when sex wasn't talked about, not in families, not in schools, and certainly not in public. For women especially, desire was treated as something shameful, and for men, intimacy was reduced to performance. As a result, so many people learned to disconnect from their own bodies. They learned to treat touch as a duty, pleasure as selfish, and vulnerability as weakness. Decades later, those silent teachings still live inside their skin, even if their minds have changed. Emotional distance and its consequences. What's even more painful than sexual repression is the emotional distance it creates. When we repress our sexuality, we often start to repress our truth. And with that, our ability to deeply connect with others. Relationships become mechanical, roles replace realness, and love becomes more about duty than joy. Over time, many couples stop touching, not because the passion is gone, but because their unspoken discomfort has grown too loud. Affection turns into awkwardness, compliments become rare, and the simple beauty of kissing or holding each other fades, replaced by routine or resentment. Looking back, many seniors say they regret not the lack of sex, but the lack of intimacy. The slow disappearance of closeness, the inability to say, I want to be touched, or I want to feel alive again. For those who spent a lifetime avoiding their sexual needs or hiding their emotional hunger, aging can bring both clarity and heartbreak. The body begins to change, health fluctuates, and opportunities feel fewer. And suddenly, the urgency to feel something, anything, becomes louder. But if that voice was silenced for decades, it can be hard to even recognize what it's asking for. Some seniors feel ashamed for wanting touch again. Others feel foolish for missing what they never allowed themselves to have. But here's the truth. The longing for connection never expires. The need to be seen, felt, desired, and held does not belong to the young. It belongs to every human being, at every age. And the tragedy isn't that time is running out. The real tragedy is believing that your chance has already passed. But if that voice was silenced for decades, it can be hard to even recognize what it's asking for. Some seniors feel ashamed for wanting touch again. Others feel foolish for missing what they never allowed themselves to have. But here's the truth. The longing for connection never expires. The need to be seen, felt, desired, and held does not belong to the young. It belongs to every human being, at every age. And the tragedy isn't that time is running out. The real tragedy is believing that your chance has already passed. Emotional nakedness and repression. Many older adults look back and realize they were never truly emotionally naked with their partners. They shared a bed, a life, maybe even a family. But they didn't share their raw selves. They hid their fears, swallowed their needs, and kept their most sacred parts behind an emotional wall. Why? Because fear of rejection ran deeper than desire for connection. Because it felt safer to be distant than to be fully known. The regret of unspoken words. And now, with decades behind them, they regret the words they never dared to say. I'm lonely. I want more. I feel empty. Emotional repression, just like sexual repression, doesn't protect you. It only isolates you. And that isolation, whether inside a marriage or alone, is one of the quietest forms of suffering. Repression often finds its roots in pain. It's like a shadow that lingers, shaping our actions and decisions, often without us even realizing it. It can be a defense mechanism, a way to shield ourselves from the rawness of hurt. But in doing so, it can bury our true feelings deep down, leaving them to fester and grow. And, well, that can lead to a cycle of isolation and misunderstanding, distancing us from the connection and understanding we truly crave. It's important to understand that repression doesn't just come from culture or religion. It also comes from pain. Many seniors who avoided intimacy for years did so because of past traumas, betrayals, or humiliations that were never addressed. They were taught to tough it out, to move on, to not talk about it, but pain that isn't processed becomes part of your identity. You start to believe that something is wrong with you, or that wanting too much love is a weakness. So instead, people settle for less. Emotionally flat relationships, performative connections, or a complete withdrawal from their sensuality. They numb themselves to avoid disappointment, but in the process, they also numb joy. Awakening and transformation can happen at any stage of life. It's a profound shift, a realization that there's more to experience, more to feel, and more to be. This transformation is not just about changing one's circumstances, but about evolving from within. It's about embracing new possibilities and letting go of old limitations. And yet, something remarkable can happen when a person in their 60s, 70s, or even 80s begins to awaken. When they finally say, I want more than this. When they dare to explore what was once forbidden. There are seniors who have their first truly passionate kiss in their 70s. There are people rediscovering touch, eye contact, and erotic self-expression decades after they thought it was too late. There are women learning to say no for the first time, and others finally learning to say yes to themselves. Men who are learning that intimacy is not about performance, but about presence. This awakening doesn't erase the regrets, but it transforms them into something redemptive. It says, I may have lost time, but I have not lost myself. One of the most overlooked aspects of aging is how deeply spiritual sexuality becomes. When youth fades and image no longer dominates, what remains is the soul's desire to merge, to be close, to be touched, to be known without armor. Emotional closeness and sensuality start to become the same language. One of the most overlooked aspects of aging is how deeply spiritual sexuality becomes. When youth fades and image no longer dominates, what remains is the soul's desire to merge, to be close, to be touched, to be known without armor. Emotional closeness and sensuality start to become the same language. Holding hands while watching the sunset becomes more sacred than anything that used to pass for passion. But this level of depth can only happen if repression is unlearned. If we're willing to look our fears in the face and say, I still want love, I still want to feel, I still want to matter. And that takes enormous courage, especially when you've been silencing those parts of yourself for decades. Seniors who have gone through this transformation often say something powerful. I didn't know how numb I was until I started feeling again. And that is the ultimate invitation. Not to relive your youth, not to become someone else, but to return to the parts of yourself that were never allowed to grow. The playful, the sensual, the emotionally expressive parts. The teenager who was shamed. The young woman who was told to be nice instead of bold. The man who was taught to conquer, not to connect. These inner selves are still alive inside you, and they are waiting for your permission, not society's, yours. Healing and reclaiming connection. It's never too late to heal. It's never too late to open. It's never too late to have an honest conversation about who you are and what you need. Even if you're 75. Even if you've been married for decades. Even if you've been alone for years. Emotional and sexual connection isn't something you missed out on. It's something you can still reclaim. But it starts with truth. It starts with stopping the self-betrayal. With saying out loud what you once thought you had to bury. With asking for the intimacy you crave instead of pretending you're fine. Because you're not here to be tolerated. You're here to be touched, loved, and understood.